Ladies and gentlemen, we have people we call domestic workers, and we all agree they play a very important role, especially for us women when it comes to care work. So, Susan, as I was doing my rounds in the courts or in the corridors of justice, I came upon a decision from courts of, I do not want to call them a house help, let me call them a domestic worker who apparently had been earning 4,000 shillings per month and had taken the employer to court and was awarded about 500,000 and got some other declarations as to her rights. And I know the issue is bringing a lot of heat, but let's go back to the law. What does the law say about domestic workers, their rights and remuneration?
Thank you, Stella, for that question. And I'd say that, first of all, all domestic workers are protected by the Employment Act. And the Employment Act outlines their rights as employees because they are employees. And it also, of course, it outlines their obligations. And more importantly, the obligations from their employer, the obligations of their employer towards them. So there is that part. There is also a minimum wage order, which specifies what would be the minimum amount they would expect to earn from that kind of engagement. So currently, from their last revision of the minimum wage order, it provides different classes of domestic workers. And now, since this particular one was house girl, or we like to call them domestic manager, the threshold is set at 16,000 as the minimum wage that they're supposed to earn. So if you're paying anything less than 16,000, then you're in contravention of that law. Yeah, so we can start from there as a base of this discussion.
So let's forget that we are lawyers and, as they say, come to the ground. And this is not for you as a lawyer, for you as the normal Kenyan, the ordinary citizen, grappling with this economy. Most of us do not even earn, maybe some earn that 16,000, and maybe someone earns 50,000, for example. Should the courts balance the ability of this person who's earning the 50,000 to pay their domestic help 16,000, or since the law is set, if you have a house manager, pay them the 16 and figure out how to survive on the rest?
I even don't think this is a question for the courts to address because, of course, we know that when it gets to court, the judicial ambit as an arm of government, theirs is just to interpret the law, which has already been passed by Parliament. So now there's that law in place. The judiciary is not doing a balancing act. And of course, sometimes it does a balancing act. But here, for this particular situation, it is just interpreting the law as it's set. Of course, there have been conversations that have been held online, and people have a lot to say about this particular decision. And the conversations that I've had are that even the average labor wage for an average citizen of Kenya is below 30,000. So how do you expect somebody earning 30,000 to afford this 16,000? So perhaps now that we are past that because the law has been passed, those questions should have been phrased as policy discussions before this particular law was passed to address what we would like to call 𝗵𝗃𝗃 ground. But now we are past that. There is a law in place, and if you're paying your domestic worker here specifically mentioning your domestic manager or your house girl, anything less than 16,000, then you are in contravention of the law and you will be held into account if this matter is brought before the court. Of course, I'm not saying, this is not in any case saying that those people having concerns about their minimum wage are wrong. But as we like to say, the law is very clear. So Stella, I think that is where we are at now.
Interesting. If you asked me now to comment on this issue as a lawyer,
yes,
and also as gender, someone with a background in gender and development,
yes,
I will take us back to why are we having domestic workers? Did we have domestic workers in the past? And in the past, that goes to even before we became very nuclearized in our families. And usually you find that in the past, in the era of extended families, when our forefathers and ancestors used to live communally, domestic work, which is care work, because that's why we mostly bring these domestic workers, was being shared so that an older aunt would take care of the children as the parents were doing something else productive. And so we didn't have this issue. But then when we now started getting into the formal labor market and making our families more nuclear, then that support system was removed. Actually, that support system was more of a social protection measure. So it was removed. And then now became necessary that if you want to have your children taken care of, the household, then you have to employ someone. So came in the issue of the domestic managers. So what for me the issue is, it goes back to care work. And I recently saw, and I know this has taken a lot of effort and agitation from people, for us, even in our economy, to quantify how much care work is. And I saw that recently we had said we can say that an individual woman's care work annually amounts to, was it about 108 or 105,000? That is annually. And that is the contribution of someone who is at home doing care work. That is their contribution to the GDP. But again, yes, it's a step in the right direction in terms of quantifying care work. But there's a convention called the International Labour Organization 189, and popularly known as the Convention on Domestic Workers. I think 2011, must have come in 2011, which Kenya as a country has not ratified. And this convention defines who a domestic worker is, what domestic work is, and what it is not. So if you have someone working at the household level, that's a domestic worker. And that creates an employer-employee relationship. But if you have people who sporadically do domestic work, it's not in a continuous manner, those ones are not domestic workers. So we've had a lot of agitation towards Kenya ratifying the ILO 189 on domestic work, because it will really help. If we align our laws to this convention, it will really help us to move steps forward to deal with this issue of domestic work. And we have another one called the ILO 190, but ILO 190 is for informal workers in the informal sector, trying to recognize them and have them have rights. So for me, without going into the legal argument of 16,000 and I'm earning 30,000, how do I pay, is for us as a people and as a government to first deal with the issue of care work. So if I am a woman and I know that I can go to work and have my 2-year or 1-year-old just in a room adjacent being taken care of, then it will eliminate the need for me to have
domestic work at home.
If men today is International Men's Day, and we are celebrating boys and men, and for me particularly, let me give a shout out to the men who do not see care work as a woman's and girl's role, and they gladly take care of that. I celebrate you and urge that you also tell the other men and boys that care work is not necessarily a woman and a girl's job. So if we can even get men to understand that you can actually take part in care work, then that helps a lot. That even for the government, can we have infrastructure that will help now the women who are not able to afford that 16,000 to have a place where they can take their children? Because usually in this care work equation, the issue is usually, where do I leave my young children? Then remember also we have women who have a double burden. Let me not say women, parents who have a double burden, where you have even children with disabilities. Yes, they are of age, but they're not able to take care of them. So you need to have someone take care of them throughout. So that goes back to what should government do? And for me, it's put up infrastructure, get private entities to partner with us and have infrastructure to offload that burden of care work. And then, if I look at it from now a strictly gender lens, we get that it is always women who are grappling with the issue of care work. And so if we do not take steps to address the issue of care work, then it means you're still burdening women. So that is how I will look at it. But for me, I will call for government to adopt and ratify that convention, the ILO 189. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Stella. I think those are very interesting perspectives, especially on how we quantify care work and what it means in terms of gender roles. Because the Constitution says everybody is equal. So how equal are we if we are constantly putting the pressure on domestic care work on women? And where as opposed to men, and where does that balance lie? And also very interestingly how, because I've also had conversation of if you're earning 30,000, people have said if you're earning 30,000, then you have no business employing anyone. Those are, of course, those who are pro the positive law. We have to enforce the law as it is. Yeah. So positivists have said if you're earning 30,000 in the spirit of the law, you have no business employing anyone as a domestic worker. But the reality is this is the average wage if it's 30,000. So how does an employer of this person who's earning 30,000, what measures have they put in place to ensure that they are not burdened with both their actual work that they're supposed to do for the organization and the domestic care that they have children they need to take care? What balance is struck? As you said, do they have playpens for children so that they can come in with their children? So a very interesting perspective there in not seeing this as a legal issue, but also expanding it to see it as a gender issue, as a constitutional issue. So very interesting insights.
In fact, I've just remembered that even as we are saying we need to ratify ILO 189, our division of matrimonial property, for instance, in a way acknowledges care work. You remember in the past when we'll say, what is your contribution? Now, if you look at the act, it says it can be monetary or non-monetary. But the problem has always been, if a woman is coming to say, this is my stake in this property, how do I quantify the care work that I put in? So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 is a step in the right direction, the 109 is still a step in the wrong direction. So for me, as much as the 105 or 108 I still do not think that, and this is my personal opinion, that care work is actually 108 or 105 in terms of its contribution to the GDP. And we can have a discussion on how even care work actually it forms the center of our work, like the gainful employment we have. Because I usually challenge employers, if you have 50 women in your organization and they do not show up in a day because maybe the house manager was not available, a child was unwell, and there was no one to take care of them, what does that do to you as an employer and to your enterprise? And if they didn't show up for 2 days, for example, what happens? It means it affects the bottom line of your business. So for me, I would urge us to look at it from a very wholesome point of view, not legal, not gender, but as an issue that transcends all these fears, and come up with solutions, some of which I have said.
Yeah, so perhaps we're looking at a policy framework that maybe helps to address that a policy framework that takes into account everything that we've discussed here, and that maybe helps to amend some of these provisions so that it caters to the reality on the ground and makes it fair also on a gender level.
Yeah. I'm cognizant of the fact that certain organizations have been working on a care policy. I think very soon it should be maybe taken to Parliament, but there's a policy that has been worked on or is being worked on around the issue of care. It's a very interesting one, and I would urge our listeners and viewers, as and when you get an opportunity to give your input on this care policy, please do. When you see those calls for public participation, give your views to enrich that document. We want to harvest from something we call the demographic dividend. Kenya hasn't gotten to that point, but at some point we say we will have a lot of our population working. And so now, if our population, the majority is working, who's taking care of the home front? Who's taking care of the care work? So, yeah, I'll urge everyone to please contribute and see how we can make sure that we take care of this issue of care work. So now you've heard about the dilemma we find ourselves in, with the law on one part saying that the minimum wage is 16,000 and your domestic worker has certain entitlements. And then we have, on the other hand, the realities of our economy and what we are going through. We've also discussed about, so how did we get ourselves here? It means the social protection mechanisms that we had have been done away with, and so the need for domestic workers. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have a lot of questions and a lot to be discussed on this issue because it's an issue that affects all of us. So we are calling on any professional again. As we said, we are here to celebrate professionals and hear how you use your skill and professional knowledge to provide solutions. So if you're out there, please write to us at law@cmadvocates.com. We will be glad to host you and have a discussion towards getting a solution to this issue of care work vis-a-vis what the law provides for as minimum wage for domestic workers. Until next time, thank you and keep watching.